afternoon, everyone. I apologize for my tardiness. Roger did tell me to be here at 10:45. Anyway.
Oh, really?
Anyway.
We got it.
He's hard on me, but I love him. Okay. Anyway, thank you for the invite. I want to thank you for the invitation to come. And for those of you that don't know me, I am pastor of Tabernacle Baptist Church. I've been at Tabernacle now for 21 years. I came here in 1994, and it has been an interesting journey.
To say the least.
Because I came here married with 3 children from Oakland, California. I was in Oakland, California for 10 years pastoring. Started off in Birmingham, Alabama, born in Toledo, Ohio, migrated to Birmingham. I used to be a television news photographer. Quit, went back to school in Stanford University, got a BA in religion, went to California for graduate school, got called to a church, stayed out there for 10 years, and then got called to this church, Tabernacle. And interesting enough, it seems as though there's always been these sort of miracle pivotal points that I've had in my life, and the call from Oakland, California to Atlanta was interesting, and because my wife and I at the time were going to New York to a convention. We were in New York, and a distant friend that we had not had much contact with, he had been a musician of mine at the church in California, but just out of nowhere he calls the house. We were actually in New York at a person house sitting, and so she answered the phone. She said, well, Pastor Meredith and Sister Meredith are not here, and but they're in New York at a convention. And he said, well, give me the number. He was very persistent. Give me the number that you have for him. And so he called us in New York at the hotel. And when I answered the phone, I was like, his name was Charles Ayers. I don't know if anybody remember Charles Ayers. He was a musician. So Charles Ayers had called, and I was like, well, what this guy want? Because he was so persistent. I mean, there was really no relationship there. And so he said, when you leave New York, you should come to Atlanta. Well, we had a ticket to stop in New York. He didn't know anything about us coming to Atlanta. But we were going to stop in Atlanta because my wife and I were talking about moving to Atlanta. So he calls, and so we said, okay. He said, make sure when you get here, please call me. So we flew in that Saturday morning, and we called him. He was at the hotel immediately. Matter of fact, he was in North Carolina. Drove from North Carolina to Atlanta just to entertain us. And so it was just so strange. And then he took us around, and he said, when we were in the car, leaving the Sheraton Hotel, he said, Atlanta would be a great church, a great city for you to pastor in, a great city for you. And I was like, well, how is he all in the, in our heads when we have never had any conversation? The first church he took me to was Tabernacle Baptist Church. Tabernacle was vacant at the time. I didn't know anything about any vacant churches. It was vacant at the time. The first person I met when I walked in church was the chairman of the search committee, the pulpit committee. That was the first person I met. So the first church I went to, the first person I met was the chairman of the pulpit committee. Then he took me to 2 other churches, Faithful Baptist Church and to another church. And so my wife and I, then he took us out to lunch. And then that Sunday morning, my wife and I woke up and said, well, what church do you think you feel like going to? And she said, I don't know, I felt something at that Tabernacle. Why don't we go there? So we got dressed and went to Tabernacle. And they asked me the Pope would say, do you sing? Like one of them singer preachers. I said, yes. So they invited me up to sing. So I sung, My Soul is Anchored, and people carried on and fluttered and carried on. And so after that, we flew out Sunday afternoon, and Monday, we tried to call Charles to thank him for being so hospitable and showing us around. And when we called around, we couldn't get him, he never answered. And then later on that evening, we got a phone call that Charles Ayers had a massive heart attack in his car after service. I was like, whoa. And from that point on, Tabernacle pursued me to come to be the pastor of the church. And it was just ironic that God used this guy to connect me to Tabernacle. Everything was just flowing to connect me to Tabernacle, and then he transitions and goes home to be with the Lord. And then the rest is history. Then they called. It was almost as if, you know, it was a purpose, on purpose, for me to be in Atlanta. And so, you know, we got in there, and of course I was doing the usual traditional preaching. I never really preached, I never said anything against same sex. Well, this was in '94. 2001, my middle son, on his 21st birthday, comes out to us, to my wife and I. He comes in the kitchen, this is his birthday, with cake and everything there. He says, I have something to tell y'all. And so we're like, okay. He says, I just want y'all to know I'm gay. And so I was like, oh, okay. I kind of knew it, but okay. Since I announced it, but his mother, she just went to the, she grabbed her pearls, and all these gyrations of concern about her son. And so we went to, he said it, then he went out to his room, and his brothers and everybody, they've embraced him. It was like, you know, we don't care, we love you, you're our brother. And I was like, son, you're okay, nothing, there's no issue. And his mother was just, oh, and so then she takes him to our family therapist, because we have this family therapist. She takes him to the family therapist. And in the family therapist, the therapist says to, because I didn't go, because I was like, why am I going to, why does he need, she said, he needs to see a therapist. I'm like, I don't think he needs to see a therapist. Not something the therapist can talk him out of or something. So she insisted that he see the therapist. Well, she gets back, she says, the therapist said there's nothing wrong with him, but something is wrong with me. I was so happy to hear that. I was so happy. She had grown up in this traditional, conservative Baptist family, and her father was a deacon and her mother was a deaconess, and they were all this stuff they did in church. And my family was not like that. We drank liquor, played cards, went to church. We were the average Baptists, did everything we could on Saturday and showed up at church on Sunday morning.
With the rest of the preachers.
Smoking cigarettes on the church ground. You know, we were the average Baptist folk. And so she would always condemn, you know, your family are just heathens. Y'all just, you know. She would always talk about us. Well, at the same time that Micah comes out, she discovers that her conservative, honorable father, who was a deacon at the church for 40 years, had 2 other children that showed up that the family knew nothing about.
Wow.
That were the same age as her 2 younger sisters. So that was good. Anyway, so a therapist actually said, she came back and said, I think the lesson that you need to learn here is what is unconditional love. What is really unconditional. She said, because by then she knew that I was, you know, gay, bisexual 12 years into our marriage. We still lasted for 16 years after that. And so she says to the therapist says, you need to ask the question, why did the Lord put you with a gay, bisexual man and now give you a gay son? She said, maybe the lesson in this is for you to learn unconditional love, because all you've known all your life is love on condition. And so at that point, she picked up. I never really preached against homosexuality. I really couldn't, because I wasn't one of those kind of preachers that would say something to throw off on me. You know, there are people, pastors in the pulpit who condemn it, preach against it, so that the spotlight is not on them, to throw the people off. Well, I was never one of those kind. And so what we did was we picked up every book we could to read about homosexuality and what the Bible says, so I could be clear about understanding, because she and I agreed, I'm not going to condemn my son. I'm not going to say anything against him and who he is. So we need to have a better religious, biblical understanding of what the text is. So we bought Daniel Hamnaki's book, Peter Gomes, Mel White, just every literature we could find on the subject. And after we did a thorough investigation of the text, and I think Jack Rogers is the best book. Jack Rogers is a Presbyterian minister, bishop of the Presbyterian church, who they assigned to study the scriptures and homosexuality in the church, so that the Presbyterian church could have a definitive statement for homosexuality. You know, those churches really put in the time so that they can be clear about their theology, and so they can be unified in their understanding. Well, his book was really good. And so after we read these books, then we were very clear on the message. Then I decided to completely change my theology on purpose, since we're talking about purpose. On purpose, change my theology and change my teaching. One of the first things I did was take sin out of my theology.
All right.
Because I think our concept of sin was so skewed, warped, and messed up. And it was used to demonize, dehumanize, criticize, and put people and marginalize people. And this whole concept of sin does not mean what people teach. And so that was one of the first things I did, was to take sin out of the Bible. And then, on purpose, I began to teach what the Bible really says about homosexuality. And so we had, teaching it in the church. And so we were really trying to explain to people, it's not a sin to be gay. What you've heard all your life, what preachers have said, here's what the truth of the text is all about. And then also, on purpose, develop a theology that says, the Bible is not a science textbook that answers the human condition from a scientific perspective. It's a book about a love story between their understanding or concept of God and how they related to this concept of God. Because there are a lot of concepts of God. And so what makes sense to me is, why would we use this ancient Semitic society that is about the size of Texas to govern the whole world? Why then does this ancient Semitic society, this book of antiquity that has been edited and re-edited multiple times, why are we using that as an authority to govern our society today? That made no sense to me. And so, like I tell other pastors, you got to learn, you got to have the courage to adjust your theology. You got to have the courage to rethink your theology, especially if your theology is alienating and hurting people and demonizing people. Because, and then you have to have a theology of God that is different from the traditional theology that says God is standing up somewhere beating up on folks.
If I'm not mistaken, and I want to say this, isn't that what Christ did? Is that he challenged theology. In other words, he said, they would say, Moses said, if they did such and such, you stone them. But he said, ye without sin cast the first stone.
Absolutely.
But I say that because, being someone that had money stolen from them in church, but it made me really, I felt it all along, but it really made me rethink. And that's the whole thing. It made me think. A lot of times people are sitting in church, they're not thinking. They're just being guided like sheep to the slaughter.
Yeah, and other people take form.
But I did want to say that Jesus did change it, and that's why they put him on the cross.
Absolutely. That's why they crucified him, because he went against the establishment. And so our church then, because there were no, at this particular time during 2003, 4, 5, we were teaching, so we were teaching this inclusive message, this message that said everybody is welcome at the table. And when I started teaching that, of course, there was a great exodus of people from the church. We were raising on an average between $17,000 to $20,000 a Sunday. When I started teaching inclusiveness, and it's not a sin to be homosexual, or even it's not a sin to, don't condemn young people for having sex before married, they're pre-wired for it. I started these kind of teaching and was actually trying to inject also my understanding of human sexuality from a, more of a clinical perspective. Well, the traditional people left. And of course, our income went down to about, $3,000 a Sunday. I mean, we were struggling. Struggling, suffering. And, but interesting enough, for every one straight person that left, 10 gay folks came. And so I never lost the crowd. Always had a crowd at the church, because every time one person would leave, there were Sundays, and I think Dee Dee was there, and Travail, there were Sundays during that time, we weren't raising the money because the kids were working at, Macy's and stunting and carrying on, so they didn't have the money to put in church. But they were coming by the droves, and so there were Sundays, I was taking in like 40 and 50 people a Sunday. But most of them were from the LGBT community. And Roger, you were around then, so you know. And so, we had this great influx. Well, there was no other affirming church in Atlanta during that time, so everybody was coming to Tabernacle. And then, I guess after people said, well, if he can do it, then everybody else started raising up these affirming churches. The Vision Church came out, the Rim Church came out. So many other churches now have started, but Tabernacle really was the start of the foundation of where it started. Well, then what made matters even worse was in 2007, I came out to the congregation about my sexuality. And then, another shift of folk left, another shift came in. So I'm watching all this transpire.
About a journey.
Oh, a journey. So then in 2006, I discovered I had Hodgkin lymphoma cancer. And I was sitting at my desk, getting ready to do a sermon. I leaned back, like this, and I, put my head over my arm, and I said, ew. When I looked down, and there was this protrusion under my arm. And so when I felt it, it was a lump. So I went upstairs and told my wife at the time, because we were still married, I told her that, I found a lump under my arm. And so we went to our family doctor, and the doctor said, well, you need to go see a surgeon because they need to take it out and look at it and test it. Well, when it came back, it was malignant. I had cancer. And the doctor said, well, you just got a little bit in your neck. There's a little tumor in your neck. And they found a couple of tumors under my arm. He said, well, and this was in January of 2006. And then by February, they started me on chemotherapy. And I had never been sick. Even though I had the lump, I never know. When I tell you that chemo made me sick, when I tell you that is, I wouldn't wish for chemo on my worst enemy. It is the most debilitating medicine or therapy that you can take. It is a poison that they put in your body to kill cancer cells, but it's also killing you. And the doctor said to me, people who undergo chemo, lives are shortened by at least 10 years. So if I was supposed to live to be 90, I'm only going to live to be 80, according to their statistics. And so during that time, I'm old enough to have seen family members, so many people transition from cancer. And so when you fighting cancer and you sick, as sick as I was, and I steady preached and went to the pulpit, sometimes so weak they had to help me up, but I said, this is where I'm getting my strength, so I went to the church every Sunday and preached. But when you're fighting that, you entertain death. You think about it. When you have a terminal illness, and you've seen other people transition from that same illness, then you think about death. And so that opportunity to really hone in on my life and my purpose. What is my purpose? What is my meaning? Here I am, facing this terminal possible illness. And so I had an epiphany. And I said to myself, I said, what am I going to leave behind? What has been the purpose of my life? Just going to the pulpit, preaching and shouting and carrying on and buying suits and driving fancy cars. And, I said, what am I really leaving behind that makes a difference? Am I leaving a footprint behind in society that says Dennis Meredith came this way? And when I took a look at it, I said, I really ain't doing jack. I'm not leaving anything behind. Maybe Tabernacle will put me in their history that he pastored. All the other churches will put me in there. But really, am I making a difference? And it was at that point I had an epiphany that if I'm going to make a difference, then I'm going to have to live my authentic truth. I'm going to have to be myself. And I'm going to have to advocate for a community of silent, demonized, dehumanized people who can't speak for themselves, and for a community of young people who often commit suicide because nobody accepts who they are, and because they don't accept who they are, and because they live in this darkness. And so it was at that point that Epiphany said, you need to live your life on purpose, and you need to speak the truth about what the Bible says and about what you believe in your own life, and be an open book to let other people have the courage to live their truth.
Yeah.
And that epiphany turned me into a person that says, I don't care where I go or who I speak to, you will know from day one, when I walk in that room, who I am. And I'm not going to walk into a room of pastors and preachers and they whispering, oh, that's the gay one. No, I'll walk in the room. I'm gay. I'm here. I'm the gay one. So say what you want to say. Let's get it out the way so y'all won't be whispering behind my back.
Okay.
But I've discovered that I get the utmost respect from even the straight community for being authentic and being honest. Some of my best friends are straight. And they're Harley riders. I'm a Harley rider. And they're Harley riders, die-hard Harley riders. I mean, take the chains and whoop your behind Harley riders, cuss you out. And they love me to death. Every time they ride, they call me the preacher. We got to have the preacher with us. We have the preacher with us, we know it's safe. But I'm just saying this thing about purpose. And so I made the decision to do that and do it on purpose. And then by 2009, the cancer was still there. This was in 2006. 2009, the cancer was still there. I went through chemo the whole year of 2006, and the cancer never completely went away. When I finished, the doctor said, well, we still see something there, but we're going to monitor you. So for the next 3 years, I would do PET scans every 6 months. And those other scans put you in that big old thing, and you get cramps and can on, you got to put your arms over your head, just so uncomfortable. But they did that. And so by 2009, I was in the 4th stage. But here comes another miracle. I was in the 4th stage of cancer by September of 2009. There is no 5th stage. From the 4th stage, you transition. From the 4th stage, you die. From the 4th stage, that is it. I was in the 4th stage of cancer in September of 2009. And so I went to MD Anderson Hospital to get stem cell transplant, where they take your good cells out, freeze them, and then put you through extreme doses of chemo to kill all of the other cancer cells they can, and then they put your good cell back in to rebuild. They took me I went to the, I think it's the 5th floor of Northside Hospital, because that's their stem cell transplant corridor. When I tell you them people look like zombies walking around there, the white folks look white as sheets, the black folks look as black as skillets. I mean, it was just, when I tell you, the stem cell transplant is just a horrific experience. As a matter of fact, you have to be hospitalized because your white blood cell counts go so low till you're susceptible to any and every disease. And they have to hospitalize you. Well, I went to MD Anderson because I did research, and they said it was one of the best hospitals in the nation for stem cell transplant in Houston, Texas. So the first week, which was the 3rd week of September, the 4th week of September, I was admitted into the hospital. They gave me chemo. The chemo was the highest dosage your body can withstand. As a matter of fact, they gave me, when I left out of there, I had a bag of meds that looked like a grocery bag. From everything, from dry mouth to headaches to what, because they said you're going to have all of these side effects. And so I got home, and that Monday I was supposed to go see my oncologist so they could, check me out to make sure everything was okay, because I was discharged that Friday. Well, that Monday when I went to see my oncologist, my liver was completely shut down. They said my liver was practically non-existent. And they gave me these tests with, bilirubins and all that kind of stuff. And so they said you cannot do chemo because chemo will kill you. But at the same time, you're going to have to do something about your cancer, or the cancer is going to kill you. Either way, you're going to die from one or the other. And so I said, well, either way. So I went to see a gastroenterologist, and he said, this doesn't look good. He said, we can try to get your liver back up, but basically, we're just trying to keep you alive. You're just, and I was like, good Lord, what am I going to do? And so my wife came to me with a holistic doctor named Dr. Carter Tates, who's up in Roswell, Georgia. And so I went to see him, and I'd never been to a holistic doctor, never even really heard of holistic medicine. And so I went to him, and he sat back in his chair real casual. He said, Reverend, we'll get you together. You be all right. See? I'm sitting there like, what the heck, man? I'm about to die. Just casually talking about, he said, so he took out a piece of paper. He said, go to the Servananda, get you some party alcohol, get you some French gray clay. It's green in color, but it's called gray clay. And put it in a glass of water, about that much, every day. Put about 16 drops, because this party alcohol is in liquid form. Put about 16 drops in it. Stay off of white rice, anything white bread, white grits, any white stuff, because he said it's starchy. He said don't eat shrimp, crab, there's no bottom feeders, it's junk food. Don't eat catfish, because they eat from the bottom of the water of the lake. Stay away from all of these unhealthy foods.
Diet change.
Yeah, he said diet change your diet. And then he said, and get off of sugar. He said, consume as less sugar as you can. He said, no sodas, absolutely no sodas. And ironically, when I was going to get my chemo, every time I went to get chemo, they were giving me sodas. But he told me, sugar feeds cancer. He said, well, they claim to be curing you, but they're feeding the cancer at the same time.
Exactly.
Because a can of soda is like a whole can of sugar. And he said, so stay away from that, because sugar feeds the cancer. And the reason I know he was right was because to find cancer in your body, they inject a concentrated form of glucose, which is sugar. And what happens is they put you, before you take your PET scan, they inject this radioactive glucose. They put you under this blanket and warm your body, so that a warm body, the blood moves faster. So about 45 minutes, your blood, the glucose, and what happens is this radioactive glucose has a certain color to it. Well, the cancer immediately goes to the sugar to feed on, and that's how they find cancer. They put sugar in your body to find the cancer, because the cancer feeds on the sugar.
You're telling such a wonderful story. I didn't even interject, but what I want to say about that is that, and I've been telling people this too, when an opportunity arises, and that is, sugar is just like throwing gasoline on fire when it comes to cancer.
Yeah, that's right.
Sugar. Now,
Absolutely.
the opposite of that is oxygen. Cancer cells can't stand oxygen,
Right.
the stuff we breathe. But how we get it is breathing good fresh air, like first thing in the morning for pollution out there, and then also eating fresh, raw fruit and vegetables.
Fresh.
I just want to interject that when you said that.
As a matter
How
of fact,
important that is, and
it is.
to share with people who you know may have cancer. Fresh air, stay away from all forms of sugar. Be bland.
You're right. As a matter of fact, he had told me to learn to breathe. He said every day sit down and just take in air, He said, because that also helps to fight against cancer.
gonna put two tidbits in here.
Okay.
I think I've said it before and over and over. We need to ask ourselves every day, to what degree or how much fresh fruit and vegetables are we eating a day? Our body is a living body, and we are responsible for taking care of it. And that was one other thing, but it left my brain, so I have to see when we come back.
You know, I'm gonna be quiet, but the importance of it is the fact that the cells must have oxygen and nutrients. And see, the thing is that when we cook food, when we actually cook food, any form of food, it
That's right.
tastes good to us and we get some nutrients. But what happens is the heat forces the oxygen out.
Right.
And I explain this to people in this way. If we all have seen or popped popcorn, inside that little kernel is it has a little oxygen inside. When the heat and the oil or hot air or whatever hits it, it forces the air out and it pops. So that's the reason why they say don't put an aerosol can in fire, because there's a little air still inside and the heat will pop it. Well, that's what happens to our food. The oxygen that should be going into our cells is forced out. So we're getting something that tastes good and what have you, but it's not neutralizing us with what we need to survive like we should.
Right.
That's the reason why it's not the black man's, what do they call it? When you eat food and get sleepy, they say that's a black man something.
Oh, no.
Whatever they call it. But no, it's because we were not neutralized. We didn't get what we really needed, so our body got tired from trying to process it.
Right.
You know.
That's right.
That's
You're
what
right.
it is.
One
Okay,
other thing.
we won't
Okay,
miss that.
that's
All right.
Yeah, it came back to me. Okay, the other thing is, now, we've just been told that we should breathe, and we know that we're breathing now because each one of us is sitting here alive. But another thing to help us with our breathing, if you go to the party store and you see those little things that they have entertainment at a party, little kids that blow, they're whistles really, but they have some in there where you blow and it'll make the
You
noise.
mean in the little thing go
Yeah,
out?
yeah, the little thing go
comes
out.
back and
So,
forth?
but if you can stand the noise, you know, everybody in here, maybe we should have 5 whistles. So you put one in your car, put one in the bathroom, put one in the kitchen,
That's
put
interesting.
one in the living room, and every chance you get, you blow, and it helps you with your lung health and with breathing. So it's just a simple way to do it. So, you know, when I learn tidbits, then I pass it on. Now, somebody pass it on to me, and I'm passing it on to y'all, okay?
Well, if that's gonna help us get to 74, we need to.
That's right. You know, you mean 76, don't you?
Oh,
But anyway, to continue on with the miracle. So I went to a holistic doctor. I started on the regimen. I finished that chemo thing for stem cell transplant the end of September. I started on the regimen that he gave me, the Party-Aqua and French grade clay, and the diet, the 20th of October of that same year, 2009. I went to my oncologist and got another PET scan the first part of January of 2010. When the results came back, the doctor was completely amazed. He said, not only do you not have cancer anymore, he said your body is completely disease-free. He said your body is completely, it was in the report, your body is disease-free. In 3 months, from what the doctors were trying to do with the chemo, the Party-Aqua and French grade clay and the diet 3 years, did in 3 months. 3 months I was completely cancer-free, and that was in 2010, and I've been cancer-free ever since. And thank you. And the cost of Party-Aqua and French grade clay, Party-Aquas are like $13. The clay, you can get a pound of it or a little bag of it. I usually pay about $3 for it. So the cost of it was less than $20. If I did this stem cell transplant, it would have been $450,000.
Wow.
The Party-Aqua was about $16 to $17, and that regimen cured the cancer. And the doctor said cancer cannot survive in an alkaline body. And so Party-Aqua and French grade clay alkalines the body. There are a lot of things that can survive in the alkaline body. You've probably seen on the internet now they have vinegar and honey will alkaline your body. and then you can drink alkaline water. But it's hard for the body to sustain certain diseases when the body is alkaline, and it fights cancer. And so that was what he had told me. Well, this is in 2010. That miracle happened, and I made it my business to teach and to preach. Well, then, so I'm living my life on purpose. I'm in a relationship with a young guy. We've been together 10 years. Everything is on purpose. Everything is on purpose, with purpose, for a purpose. It's not frivolous. It's not just aimlessly living. It's like, I'm here for a reason. I'm here for a cause. You know, I'm here because I want my life to mean something to the world before God takes me home. Well, here's another miracle. I'm sitting in my office. This is 2000. That was 2010. Then 2013. I guess 3 years later, because this is 16. 2013, during the summer, when I tell you, because 2012, the church was almost foreclosed on. And just because you see a lot of people in church don't mean you're getting a lot of money. Most people think when your church is full, you get, no, we were not getting a lot of money. We were still financially struggling, I mean struggling. Citizens Trust Bank came in and said because we were so far behind on our mortgage, they were ready to foreclose on our church. And so, you know, I don't tell all the, you know, I'm struggling trying to figure out how to make this work. I'm not going to tell the congregation this yet because I'm trying to figure out, you know, what bank I need to rob to pay this mortgage. Well, anyway, they said, well, we found something. It was in November. He said, I'll tell you what, we found something. We're going to reduce your mortgage by $2,000. And we're going to do that for a year. But within the year, when this time is up, it could go up to what you were originally paying or even higher. He said, but we don't know. And so I was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Now this was November. In July of 2013, this white guy knocks at the door of the church. He comes in. He said, he asked me, I said, who are you? He said, told me his name. He said, I'm a real estate person. And do you know who owns that property behind your church? I said, yeah, we own it. And he said, oh, would you like to sell it? I said, well, yeah, everything for sale. I'll sell it. And so he said, yeah, I think I got somebody who wants to buy this property. He was looking at this one house on the corner. And he said, we'll give you about, $225,000 for the house. And I was like, woohoo, yay. Well, he came back. He said, do you know who owns the other property? I said, we own all of that behind the church. We own all of those parcels of land. He said, I got a guy that will come in 2 weeks, will give you $500,000 for all that. I was like, you give me what? Anyway, 2 weeks, the guy, I'd never seen the guy, some rich foreigner, comes in, writes a check for $500,000. I just held the check and looked at it. We closed in 2 weeks, which is unheard of, for $500,000. So then he comes and he says, y'all think I can sell your church? Will you sell your church? I said, well, sure. I'll sell everything. And so I went to the congregation. I wasn't going to do this behind their back. I believe you all are informed. Because I went to the congregation. They voted. They approved it. They said, well, if we can get enough money, da-da-da-da. And so by then, we hadn't even found a place to worship. We didn't know where we was going to worship. I was just going to sell it. Find me a storefront somewhere and fix it up like a grocery store or something. Do like everybody else and fix it up. And so my partner and I, we had moved to this neighborhood in South Atlanta, and we were just driving around. And so we pulled up to this church that had a chain on it and a sale sign. Honest to God, when we pulled up to the gate, we looked at each other, and he said, you feel something? I said, oh yeah, I feel something. I said, I feel something. I mean, when I pulled on the parking lot, I said, I feel something. The Church of God in Christ people, they call it quickness. But we didn't quicken, but we felt something. And we said it. We looked at each other and said, we feel something. It was so strange. There was a feeling that came over us. Well, to make a long story short, the real estate person came back, said, I got a buyer for your church. He said they'll buy it for $750,000, which, probably it was a little under market because we really wanted to sell it for $850, so we sold it for $750. Well, here it is. We were broke, had no money, couldn't pay our mortgage, and in a matter of months, we had $1.2 million in our bank account. Yeah, that's a miracle. So then we found this church. The church had been on the market for some time. The church that we drove up to found out that the church was for sale, and they wanted $500,000 for this church. $500,000. And it was a little smaller than our original tabernacle, but it still was enough to accommodate us. And so we were able to pay off our debt of the old church and pay cash for the new church and have enough money to renovate it and put some money in the bank. And here we were about to have our church foreclosed on, and God sent this man out of nowhere. So I mean, these are just pivotal miracles that I've lived with, and I believe, and here's the thing, I believe that God sent me to Atlanta on purpose.
That's right.
There was a purpose for me. I probably would have never came out. I probably would have never had the experiences that I have, as far as being what I call an authentic, realist pastor who preaches what I believe is a truth that everyone can understand. I don't believe I would have had these experiences had God not on purpose, with purpose, sent me to Atlanta for a purpose, and to live the life that I have lived. Now, I'm done when I tell you this, because I know this is over at 12 and you have to eat. So, last year, this gentleman was just sitting in my church on a Wednesday night. He was sitting there. So after the service, he comes to me and said, Pastor Meredith, I really enjoyed your message. Him and his wife were sitting there. He said, would you be interested in doing a reality show with pastors? I said, well, it depends on what the reality show is all about. Because I'm not going, I've been there where people argue, fight, and curse you out, and homosexuality is a sin. I went to Jamal Bryant's church. It was awful. He called me up there, flew me up there to talk about homosexuality under disguise that what he wanted to do was connect with his homosexual members and to be able to understand them and to support them. Now, this is what he tells me on the phone. I told Jamal Bryant, I'm not coming if this is going to be a witch hunt. Those were my exact words. If you're going to use me to witch hunt your members, I'm not going to come. No, man, this is up and up, man. I want to connect with my members, and I see that you're doing a great job within the LGBT. So he flew me up there with some of my other members and my partner. We went up there. Well, we're in a limousine, picked up from a limousine from the airport on the way to the hotel. And I noticed this other lady was in the limo with us, and she was sitting there looking all holy and caring all. And I was like, now who is she? And so coming to find out, she was a person who used to be gay, but she got delivered. Excuse my French, I said, oh, there's some shit in there. And so we sitting there, so she's sitting there all pious with supposed to be adjutant. I thought it was her girlfriend, really. And so we get to the church, and Jamal then comes in, he says, this is all on the up and up, man. We want to have a conversation. Boy, that brother flipped that thing around and tried to demonize me, tried to tell me I was going to hell, and then actually called the gay people in his church up front and began to try to do an exorcism on them. I had to get up and walk out. It was the absolute worst thing. Now, this is a brother who had sex with a 16-year-old girl in his church. She got pregnant. His wife has divorced him, and he around here trying to demonize the same-sex community. And he's picking up. I'm like, boy, I really wanted to slap the tar out of him. I was so mad when I left him. But anyway, so, I'm out here doing this work. Well, anyway, this preacher says, I want you to be on this show. So I didn't want to be in any context like that again. I've been on TV, universities, everywhere talking. And so he said, no, it's not like that. Well, then he takes me to E. Dewey's church, Traveler's Rest. No, and E. Dewey's a great guy, good preacher. No shade. So E. Duty was putting together this pastor show with me, this foolish pastor that has this, I don't know, you may have seen him. He tells somebody next to him, read. And then they read, and then he just, whatever his name is. Foolishness. When I tell you, foolishness. But anyway, I'm on there with him. I'm on there with E. Duty. I'm on there with all these other guys. And what they want to do is pit this show against me.
Oh my God.
So I find out they want to pit this show. Now, E. Dewey says, Doc, he hears my story. They put me on camera because they got to do this sizzle reel. Well, they put me on camera, and my story just resonated with the networks. So they're shopping this reality, they're shopping this preacher show around. Every network that they went to shopping this around said, we don't want none of y'all. We want that Dennis Meredith guy. Find him. That's the guy we want. That's the guy. We want to build a show around him. Well, all of that failed. And then last year in July, another producer came and said, you know what? You get along with your ex-wife, y'all celebrate holidays together, your partner is there with you, your children are all in the church, they're all supporting. This is such a unique story among African-American people until we feel like we can make this into a television show. So they did the sizzle reel, and they did the sizzle, and that was in July. In September, they sent it out. In 1 week, the networks were blowing up their phone saying, we want this show. So they settled with WeTV. WeTV offered them a $15,000 holding contract for the show. That's unprecedented. They don't offer anybody. When you do a reality show, they offer you $1 to hold it. But they wanted this show so bad, they offered the producers $15,000 to hold the show. They were so excited, they showed me, I looked at the contract, and then the producers started fighting over who owns the show. So who could get the money. They started fighting, because they didn't even know that kind of money was going to come. And so WeTV was like, get it done. Well, this past January, they settled WeTV, and today we're signing our contracts for our own reality show called Meredith on WeTV. And they offered us an unprecedented amount for reality TV. That's an unheard of amount for reality. They don't even offer these amounts. I'm not telling you, they might tell my business, but they did offer us a really good first time out of the gate amount for the show. Well, all that to say is when you decide to live on purpose, you never know where God will take you. When you decide to live your life for purpose, on purpose, that purpose then connects with God's purpose, and the sky is the limit. So thank you all for listening. I'm working on a book. I have to have a ghostwriter. I'm not disciplined enough to sit down and write. I have to have a ghostwriter. I've had 2 ghostwriters. I got this one ghostwriter out of Florida. When he sent me back my first chapter, I didn't even understand. And so I had to cut him loose. I paid so much money out of those. Miss Meredith's book is done. She got one old book because it's telling some stuff in there.
You read it?
Yeah, I read it. Because she actually has a publishing deal. They actually paid her for her book. And so she's telling some stuff. But anyway, I don't care because it's the truth. I was harassed.
Well, on behalf of coming around, okay, that's what you said.
Just want to talk about purpose. Sometimes you don't know what your purpose is, but you've talked a lot. And I can remember one time when I was cleaning up the church one day, and it was just me and you at the church. And how sick I was. Sometimes you don't really know. And during that time in my life, I was just going through a lot of things. And I never told you, but sometimes you don't realize you say you don't realize the reason why you came to land, but you don't know. You never know why. But I think your purpose was to help other people, such as me, because you may not know it, but the things that you have, I'm not a member of your church anymore, but the things that you have showed into me, and the teaching that I've learned from you, that have elevated me to be the person where I'm at right now, even though I'm ministry where my purpose is on HIV work and stuff like that. But I just want to thank you publicly because of the fact that when I was at my lowest, I could always come to you and share things with you that, I mean, personal things. A lot of folks don't even know that our relationship, even though I'm not a member, but our relationship is strong enough to you all the time. But it's just something that you did for me that I can never pay you monetarily because, no, it's a lot of. Because right now I left my church. We're on to a smaller church now. And I left for a reason because there's some things I want to do over there that God moved it in that direction. And it's not about my sexuality. It's about spreading the word of God, the true word of God, for people that hear that people who don't really know that God really loves them for themselves. And one thing that you always say, and one thing that I'll never forget, in class when I do in class, you say, you have to be true to yourself.
Yeah.
You have to be true to yourself. So everybody, as I'm getting older and as I'm really growing spiritually in the Lord and stuff that, there are just some things in my life that I'm just not going to tolerate or going to accept no more. All this foolishness I do in my past life. That's not me. There's a purpose for me to be here.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know what your purpose is until you go through.
That's right.
I tell folks, being sick for me was a blessing.
Yeah.
Was a blessing
Yeah.
to go through. What I had to go through, the drug abuse, all that. But I can always say that even when I went through that, even with you and my friend grandma who just died a while ago, you guys sowed seeds into me that even though she's not here no more, I'm so grieving that, but the things that were embedded in me that I will never lose, that I can help, that people come to me that I don't even know, to help them get back in their care. And how you get my phone number? How you get my phone number? How you? Because my friend always told me, said, your gifts will make room for you.
That's right.
But I thank you. I thank you so much because you don't know what you have done and the encouragement you have given me over the years. That I'm just, I'm a totally different person. From the first time you met me.
Yeah.
From now.
I am too.
That when you when people see growth in you, that's good. But when you can see growth within yourself,
Yeah.
and you can go back to the people and tell them thank you,
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
Bless you.
Yeah, that's why I run it. After my age program at Tabernacle, I got a call, I don't know who it was, a young man called me. They had never been in a place where they could be themselves and be accepted. He called me, I don't know who he is today. Remember I told you that?
Yeah.
But I told him, I said, you need to come to church with me. I said, look for me, because I want to know who you are. And he says, he thanked the head of the house for making it safe to go where you are. So I say thank you too.
Because the thing about it, a lot of us who are generating, a lot of us have been through so much trauma in our life.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing you always said, that we have to change our belief system.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we're taught to believe, because I grew up and I thought I was born in AME. I was supposed to live at the AME, and I was supposed to die at the AME. Everybody in my church AME pastors and stuff like that. But my theology is different now. Because I had to come to an understanding for myself. Being true to yourself is a lot of things, and I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to, God will allow you, God will take things away from you. Just like you said at the church. People left and people came. People left and people are out of my life now. Well, he's bringing people, he's connecting with people that
Supposed to be there.
I said in meaning for it, but that's God. That's purpose.
Yeah, that's purpose.
That's right.
We're gonna stand and we're gonna make our group, and then we're gonna close the mall.